Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about my work, my entire career. I'm going to be starting from my first sound art piece when I was sitting at the Kansas City Art Institute. It was called the Metal Skirt Sound Sculpture. I attached guitar strings to the toes and heels of my shoes and to the edges of this skirt fabrication. As I stepped forward, the back string stretched out and produced a rising gliss, and the front string squeezed in, produced a descending gliss. Each leg was rising and falling simultaneously in opposite direction. And along with a lot of creaking and banging from the skirt, I amplified that metal resonator using a portable battery-powered pig nose amplifier, walked down the street, and had my walk videotaped. What I was really interested in this piece was that it functioned through an everyday activity of walking. And I really loved that. All I had to do was walk, and it activated this piece. Soon thereafter, I was working, just really a sculptor, just like really loved like metal and banging and just like putting together very simple combinations of things and homemade things, and accidentally discovered that when you stretch a string, say from wall to wall, rub it with rosin, it produces a tone that is totally different from plucking sound or bowing across. It was an accidental discovery, but this was really kind of a wild phenomenon that has really been a compelling thing that is I've been working with for 30 years now. And as you'll see, this is my first installation where I attached the wires into an acoustic resonator that I built myself. And with an art background, I knew nothing of musical harmony, musical structure. But I was very excited by the sound I could get, and here again, it was through an ordinary activity. I didn't know anything, and all I did was touch these wires, and it was as if I was playing a theremin, a very magical sound. Those were the first sounds that I made with this instrument, and at the same time that I was able to do something like that, it also exhibited just a very raw quality, which I'll show you here. finally find that sound. This is a book written by John Tyndall called Sound, published at the turn of the century, English audio engineer, scientist, where he is describing the technical, describing the longitudinal mode of vibration, which is what I'm working with in my instrument. And what's happening there is that when you rub a wire along the length, and you excite the longitudinal mode, and it's a compression wave which moves back and forth along the length. And what was very baffling to me, in working with this, was that I would tension that string. It didn't change the pitch at all. I tried different gauges. I couldn't lower the gauge by, lower the frequency by working with a thicker gauge. Fortunately, I met with an engineer, creative engineer, who explained this to me. And he brought to our meeting a vice grip and spool of brass wire. I had been working with steel piano wire that's like easy to come by. And the bronze wire lowered the frequency. He placed the vice grip, clamped it onto the wire, shortened the length. That changed the pitch. So there I had all the elements I needed to turn this idea into a musical instrument. This is in the handbook of physics. He showed me this formula where the speed of the wave divided by the string length equals the frequency. And then I was able to set up spreadsheets and work out my tunings this way. And here is a first score. I'm working in mathematically based tuning. It's called just intonation. So it's based on the overtone series, the harmonic series, which is really based on just the way things vibrate. Strings in particular vibrate in different modes all at once and produce many overtones. My instrument actually puts out an enormous amount of overtones, and that's the material of my composition, is really working with overtones. But anyway, this notation here is in just intonation, ratio-based tuning, and it's read from left to right. It's a duet, and it's basically a series, a sequence of chords. The two performers walked side by side to play and stroked the wires and change chords together. It was the only format that I could come up with to keep time with someone else, because standard notation doesn't make any sense with this. It's like long duration, it's like walking. How do you track that with standard notation? So I had to invent my own language. The next most complex way of tracking time was alternating, where one person moved out, the other moved in, and we watched each other, and then we could cover over each other's transitions and make a smoother transitions. And then I saw this Guatemalan fabric, and I just thought, this looks like music to me. This geometry, the repeating patterns, I was very interested in minimalist repeating patterns. And I came up with this system of notation where I placed colored lines on the floor at proportionate distances. And this is a work for 4 performers, read again left to right. And the lines indicate the colors of the lines, and the size of the boxes indicate the duration of each those chords were held. And so in this way I could compose more complex transitions and lengths among those 4 chords. And here is my idea of harmony was very straightforward. You know, I was teaching it to myself and started with the most fundamental musical relationships. But in doing this performance in Seattle, there were a train went by, and the addition of the train whistle with my composition just opened my ears to the complexity of dissonance, and I was so very excited by what happened in the merging of the sounds. I'm going to just move forward. I have an example of that, but how much time have I?
You still have 8 minutes.
Oh, okay. So this is a spectrum analysis of my instrument in yellow, cello, and blue, playing the same note. You can see there in the upper frequency range, 8K, 17K, my instrument is still spiking up like every overtone, pretty much equally in volume. And around here, the cello, the bowed cello, breaks down into noise, and I've still got these overtones up 26, 35K, even up here 40K, and so that's really the basic material of my composition.
Which you cannot hear.
Well, those frequencies, difference tones up in those areas then affect lower frequency range, and I believe that we sense things up there. This is just explaining how strings vibrate in these basic modes. And I created like a tool that I use. I stretch out elastic bands, like out, 30 feet, whatever. But I can stretch them to different lengths, and I've placed this pattern which shows me nodal points along the length, and that's what I use in my composition. And then this is another visualization of how those things align, these nodal points align, because my string lengths are all different. This represents an overtone series chord in those lengths, and then you can see alignments of where the fundamental of the perfect fifth is aligned to the fifth being produced on the fundamental string, and so you really hear these things when chords are played. And this is composition, solo composition, where I've moved from using colored lines on the floor to numbered lines, metric, like a metric tape along the floor, where I can map out my transitions by moving to different locations along the length of the string. This is basically like a mapping of the performers walking. And here's an example of this solo piece. that piece, the image was produced by spy cams mounted on my wrists. I wanted to bring the listener into like the microscopic kind of articulations that like to bring the listener into my world in the small little ways in which changes affect the sound. Of course, it's very difficult to hear through these tiny little speakers. But anyway,
What do you have on your hands?
rosin.
Just rosin?
Just rosin. Rosin. Yeah, but I treat the strings as well with rosin. And this is another way of articulating the strings. I designed these hollow wooden boxes that are played percussively, and these are some graphics that I use to represent articulations. And this is my notation for this. This is a piece that I composed using that, featuring that tool, and this is that notation, and then this is a part that I played with the longer duration chord changes. These are two performers, playing the piece face to face on a double-sided resonator in Boston. And there's the whole setup there, and this is the room we were in, which was spectacular. And just for you to hear a little bit of that sound in that room, that piece. And just to go into a bit of technical, this is these were designed by these were designed by a design firm who came out of Stanford, and this is the tuning mechanism that I use that I hang on the strings. Okay.